Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us this Friday morning. It's great to see all of you here. We appreciate your commitment. I know this is difficult after a very long evening last night, but thank you again for joining us. I'd like to take a moment to just call the meeting to order. This is the special board meeting of the Board of Trustees of Tarrant County College District for June 24, 2022. And do we have any public comment, Mr. Gates? Okay, no public comment. I'll just take a moment to kind of set a little bit of a framework about what we're going to do today. During this retreat, I hope that I'm going to ask two things of you, that you listen and then that you engage as well, because I think that will really help us in the end of the day, after we meet tomorrow as well, that we will have just a clear roadmap of the direction that we'd like to go in the coming months. We're continuing to stay focused on our students and success and our faculty and our staff and just general outcomes. And so I think if we all listen and we engage as much as we can certainly make some great strides. Just to let you know that there are copies of the presentations in a folder there next to you, so if you want to take notes, you're welcome to do so. We also have some information regarding the mission statement there that we'll talk about as well. So want to just take also a moment to acknowledge Gwen Barbie, who was the wife of Dee Jennings, who passed yesterday. So we want to make sure that we keep her in our thoughts and in our prayers. And also, Dr. Morrison, if we can just, I'm sure she's watching us, but she was here, such a trooper with us last night. She wasn't feeling well this morning, but just keep her in your thoughts as well. And we send our greetings to her, because knowing Dr. Morrison, she will be watching us, and so she'll be taking names. So again, thank you to everyone that was involved in the preparation for today. I know that a lot of you spent a lot of extra hours. We saw folks here late last night. We saw folks here before early in the morning. So thank you again for your dedication and commitment. Is there anything you'd like to say, Mr. Barr? All right. Okay. We'll go ahead and turn it over to Dr. LeBlanc. But as I said, we're going to stay focused on our employees. We're going to stay focused on our students and our outcome and success. And Dr. LeBlanc is going to kick us off. And thank you as well, Dr. LeBlanc, for preparing all of this and organizing it and getting together with staff on this. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Ayala. It does take a team, and you're looking at the powerful team right around this table. So I'm pleased that they're all here, and you will get to hear from some of them as well. So first on the agenda is Marlon Moat, and he will start us off. As you well know, we are preparing for the SAC-COC reaffirmation visit, which is just a year away. It seems like a long time, but it's just a year away. And so what we're going to do first thing this morning is aligned with that. So Marlon, if you would.
Oh, no, it is. Great. Sure. Mr. Marlon Moat, I'm the District Director for Institutional Effectiveness and Accreditation here at TCC, as well as the SAC-COC Liaison, which is our accreditation. And I'm pleased today we have Dr. Diane Warrius-Huey, who's going to be working with us in terms of discussing the mission. It's a priority in terms of reaffirmation, and it's an integral part of our documentation. And so she's been working with us over a year in terms of planning with the 3G8P. She worked last year with the presidents in terms of preparing some materials for the college to share. And so she continues to work with my office in terms of support for reaffirmation. So I'm going to turn the first part over to Dr. Huey, and then I will come in at the second half. All right? Thank you.
Thanks, Marlon. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Well, Well, thank you, all of you, for the opportunity to join you this morning. As Marlon mentioned, I've had the great opportunity to work with a number of individuals from TCC over the past year, focusing on 3G8P and more recently in preparation for the reaffirmation with SAC-COC. And part of that conversation is to engage in a review of the mission statement. And we've been doing that. We wanted to engage all of you in a conversation today about the mission, to begin with a review of the mission statement and share a little bit of context for that, but then to spend the majority of our time here in a conversation about how we can live the mission better. We already do a really good job at TCC of living the mission every day, and I'll share some examples here of how that's happening. But we're really interested in the ideas that all of you have about what can be done to be living that even better. So, as we all know, a mission statement is a concise explanation of the organization's reason for existence. It describes the organization's purpose and its overall intention. And as we look at the TCC mission statement, you can see how this is true. Tarrant County College District provides affordable and open access to quality teaching and learning. Now, if you look this up online, it's not bold-faced. We decided to do that to emphasize a couple ideas within the mission that are of particular interest and also serve to demonstrate how the mission statement dovetails nicely with 3G8P and some of the other operational elements, I guess, here at TCC. So if we break this down and we look first at the idea of affordability, that's really important because TCC really prioritizes the effective use of budget funds to ensure affordability for students, and really takes great strides to look at how that connection exists and how affordability can be an important priority. The second is open access, and this really is at the heart of what TCC is, what it does, and why wide access is a key priority for TCC. The community is given wide access through open admission, programs, services, and outreach, and that really is what TCC does, and it's wonderful, and it's here in the mission statement. And the last, of course, is quality teaching and learning, and that's very critical. That's something that's embraced campus-wide. Students are clearly the priority. They're at the center of what TCC does, and TCC really prides itself on offering the community high-quality teaching and learning experiences for all levels of students, for all stakeholder groups, and it really prides itself on being agile in responding to community needs. And these ideas are really captured here in the mission statement. So as we switch over and look at a little bit of the context and background of the mission statement, this mission statement is not new. It's longstanding and it's reviewed regularly. And part of that's good practice, and part of it is because as we come up to reaffirmation for SAC-COC, it's important to engage in that conversation. The mission was originally created with all of the presidents, and it was just under a review at a retreat on June 7th with the campus presidents and other TCC stakeholders. And in that conversation, they came to a couple important conclusions. One is they affirmed the fact that the mission really does guide TCC budget priorities, and that goes back to the idea previously presented about affordability. This is really something very important at TCC. Also, the mission is operationalized and lived daily through the 3G8P implementation, and that's something also that we'll spend a little bit more time talking about, I think, once Mr. Moak gets back up here. But the 3G8P implementation is a very critical piece, and it's a good example of how TCC lives the mission daily. Also, this is important to reflect on all of this as part of an ongoing process of self-reflection, continuous improvement, and ensuring that a mission statement not only dovetails with budget priorities and important operational pieces at the organization, but also that it's something that they are living, that the organization, in this case TCC, is living daily. And that's something that TCC is doing. And so one of the important outcomes of this meeting is that this mission shouldn't be edited or changed at this time. We want to stay the course. We want to keep the mission as it is. It's serving its purpose. It's being used effectively. And it's important to not make any changes coming up to a reaffirmation. So the next question is, how do we live this mission daily? And this is really important. Clearly, 3G8P is one way. I have a next slide coming up that's going to talk about that. But here's a list of examples of the ways the mission is lived daily. And this starts getting us into the facilitation piece, where I'll engage you in probably about 90 seconds or so in trying to generate more ideas about how the mission can be lived daily, what we're doing well, what we can be doing better to live the mission daily, and to be engaging in what the mission says we're here to do. So here are some examples. University transfer programs and collaborations, workforce education programs, technical programs and customized training, developmental and adult literacy courses, community education and partnerships, dual credit programming, early college, high school, guided pathways, outreach programs, and simply by embracing diversity in all aspects of what we do at TCC. So this is a really short list, and I'm sure you're already generating some ideas, and we're really excited to hear those. The mission, as I mentioned, is also lived daily through 3G8P, and as you may recall, the three goals are to be one college, student ready, and serve the community. And again, this not only dovetails nicely with the mission statement, but it also demonstrates how the community and students are right in the center of all that TCC is and what it does. This framework has been guiding all of the work and actions at TCC. And as I mentioned before, part of the reflection, part of what we're doing is engaging in this ongoing process of self-examination, self-improvement, and unending pursuit of excellence. So that's why we wanted to engage in a conversation today to say, here are some things that, some ways in which we're living the mission. Here are some ways we are presenting it daily in all the work, but we're really interested in your thoughts. How can TCC live its mission better every day? And this is kind of something that's going to be open for the floor. Hopefully we can engage in a little conversation for about the next 20 minutes or so. Mr. Moat's going to transcribe the ideas and suggestions that are presented, and we'll be able to refer to those later in our continued work. So now I turn it over to you.
I don't have an idea yet, but I wanted to let everybody know that she spoke about these goals being discussed a lot by the presidents. I happened to be here one day down here, and there was a mass of the presidents and other people, and there was a board up there, and there were all these ideas, and they were discussing the three, how to implement the goals and principles. And it was I was looking in there, and it was a very intensive conversation about who does what and that kind of thing. So I really appreciate that. I know for a fact it is an ongoing process.
Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. One of the questions to Mr. Greenhill's point is, we have some very, very strong, very smart people here. And we, one of the things that I've always thought about is, I'm a parent, is that you can have a fantastic school, but it's really the teachers that are connecting with your child, or it's the staff that's welcoming your child. And so I think that still applies here as well. And so for me, I think living our mission better, where we talk about quality teaching and learning, is what we're doing to help our staff and staff development, professional development. I don't know how we could mention, but that's just, for me, that's something how we could live our mission better, by making sure our staff has the need. We're meeting their needs, but they're also feeling valued.
Okay, thank you.
Now, this is not a quiet group, so give us a moment. We're going to
You
get
had a late
there.
night last
We're-
night.
It's
I
just
can
that it's
appreciate
get
that.
9:15, 9:16. We'll start going here in just a moment. I know that.
So your recommendation is we're not changing the mission as we move forward?
That was the outcome at the June 7th meeting,
Okay.
at least at this time.
So will it be
just-
reevaluated at some point? And,
Right,
okay.
just to refresh everyone's memory, we did have a very lively discussion about the mission. We also talked about vision and values. And we took quite a bit of time to have that conversation. So we agreed that perhaps we could discuss the vision further and the values, but keep the mission as it is. And so that's kind of where we are. We did make some adjustments to the values. I think we added some things to it from what we had before. Sean needs a mic.
Yes.
He's
We could go around the room if you want us to do that, so we can start. I think Mr. Greenhill wants to say something. He has a thought. Something very profound, Bill.
No, I just wondering, how can we live the mission better every day? How can we, and I'm a trustee, how can we as trustees assist us in going forward with our goals and principles? For example, I know what my statutory duties are. I know what my statutory duties are: budget, hire chancellor, that sort of thing. But I feel like, for example, advocacy, getting the word out, being a member of the team, going to the campuses. What do you think the trustees' part is in making our mission better every day? What do you think? Because we go to jobs, I go to my law firm, and we get opportunities to. Reginald gives us opportunities to events that we can go to. We're now doing highlights at our. But what do you think? What does the faculty think? Is anything missing that we're not doing that to make our mission better every day? I mean, you're not answering the question. You're just writing it down.
That's a great
Well,
question.
sorry.
While the faculty think about it, I think the policy is critical in setting the tone for what happens throughout the district. But I know the faculty are not shy, so I'm a little taken aback that they're not saying a lot.
It's early.
It's
It's
early.
early on a Friday morning. Go ahead. Help yourself.
Okay, I was waiting for the chair to say something, but I think that one of the things that faculty appreciate is consistency and transparency. We know over the years, my years here at TCC, we've seen changes. It happens in any institution and organization. And I think one of the things that happens that makes change easier to manage, especially kind of at that ground level teaching is where things are consistent, and where there's a little shift with consistency, at least things are transparent. Because like you all, one thing that faculty we don't adjust well to is being blindsided and feeling like things are happening and we don't have a voice. And if our voice is asked, the voice is not actually valued or appreciated. So, Tia, do you have anything to add to that?
I have.
Okay, yes, sir.
Just as maybe my being out of touch or not knowing how do students communicate real needs so that they're heard by people that can do something about them. I'm not really sure if do they have representatives on with the faculty thing where they get to talk to them, whether it's child care, whether it's something to do with finances that they're having trouble with, and we know of those resources that are available. And do we have a real good vehicle for student engagement where they are comfortable or know that they can come to the school, to the faculty, and just address whatever things or challenges they're having in their personal lives that can be dealt with. If I can come to school if I had child care. I could come to school if, the bus is there, but I live in this place and there's not a bus. Or those things, do we have a clear path for them to know how to get that information to them?
So I would say that I don't know that there's a separate formalized structure, but through each entity at the college, we do collect feedback like counselors, advisors. We have the Eliminating Barriers Fund. We have faculty evaluations. We have conversations with our students. We have student activities and student government, right? So we have mechanisms embedded, I would say, in the structure of how we operate as a college where students' voices are actively solicited, but there is not a separate system that simply operates to collect data. Did I answer you?
You did. And I'm not necessarily sure if we just want to collect data. I think when we went to the CCATT conference on last week, there were some students that came and they did a couple of presentations, and one of the things they talked about was some of the difficulties that they were having in their personal lives. They were really mental health issues and things like that, that because the student government had direct access to the trustee meetings, they were seated at the trustee meeting, that they could talk about it and then bring it to this, and then that was a formal way for the college to get a chance to address some of those things if they needed to be addressed. Right. And so I thought that was really valuable because there are people that won't speak in every environment. When I was a student, I was a nice student. I didn't talk to faculty because I'd been at work all day. I came to class at night, and I had to get up at 5 o'clock the next morning. So when I got out of class at 9 o'clock, I didn't have time. I didn't want to be spending extra time. I had to go. I didn't have any issues, but when you have a life like that, then it becomes a little more difficult when you're having those things to know where to plug in, because you haven't been plugged in the school system. I used to say I went to college, but I was not a college student. Right. I just went to college. And so if you don't have a place where I know I can go to get heard so that I might get some help, then I can just go there. I could just send an email to that place, or I could talk to that. We talk to students better than we do faculty sometimes. Just something to make sure that we are addressing and not just putting our program and say, okay, this is what you come do this. Well, that may not be the need on that campus.
Right.
Good thing overall, but that campus may have another need, but we don't know that because we don't get to hear those things.
That's true. And we do have care teams on each campus. who exist to address student needs. To your point, though, the concern is if you don't hear or if I don't observe it on you, then I may not know to report it or to get care for you. I think that that goes back to the question of how can we live our mission. It goes back to relationships. I think from every encounter at the college, it's about building relationships that creates a safe space that makes it possible for us to not only know our colleagues and our students enough to be able to recognize when a concern is present, but also to create a safe space where that concern will be shared and communicated. As a faculty member, I think part of my job in creating quality teaching and learning is creating an environment where my students can respond and share and we can mitigate concerns. No, I'm not going to change the rigor of my course, but we can problem solve together if I know what's happening, right? So I think part of that goes back to our mission of creating a space where students can be successful, which includes mitigating barriers, which is done by creating quality relationships in every encounter that they have.
And I'd like to add, in addition to what Tia said, your question was how do students get to that help? We as faculty, we notice when they have excessive absences, or we notice when the quality of their work within the classroom has changed. And based on what Tia said of having those relationships, we can, if it's face-to-face, we can reach out to them via email. If we see them in the hallway, I've seen students and I'm like, I haven't seen you in my class. Is everything okay? Come talk to me. And then that opens up the door to additional conversations. But if it's an online student, you can certainly use the communication tools. And students usually appreciate a follow-up email with, you haven't been to class, you haven't submitted your work, instead of you're going to be dropped, but are you okay? And how can I help you? And TCC, we have the automatic emails that go out after so many absences. They get an email that says, "Hi," their name. We're checking in to see how you're doing. But if a faculty member follows up with a more personal email that says, "Hey, I just want to know how can I support you?" When I've done that, students usually reach out and say, "I've had a change of my job. I've got child care issues," or in the last year and a half, they've been struggling with COVID or the after effects, and they appreciate that kind of personal interaction. And then we can then do the care team report, which then leads them to the more significant things that we have here in the institution, whether it's counseling, inside or outside, but it's just putting them on that right path where they know that they can get support.
Well, thank you, CC. A lot of that just was I use the word ignorance real easy because it's okay, I'm okay.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things I'm ignorant about. That means you just don't know. So that's good to hear that those things are in place. But I just think as we trying to live daily out, I think the student focus is really important. Without them, we don't need a whole bunch of us. So having that maybe just needs to be put in a way where it's on signs and posters, come see, advertised so that everybody knows that it's available for them to do. Sometimes communication, we hide the best things about TCC sometimes, and people don't ever know.
Right.
That how really wonderful we really are because we don't brag, and it's not brag. If it's a fact, it's not brag. It's just providing information.
That's a very good point that you brought up, and thank you all for providing your feedback as well. And, part of what we've been doing with the 3 goals and the 8 principles is just evaluating just the whole process when a student enters our door. And so when you think about that, they're meeting with advisors, they're meeting with the registrar's office, they're meeting with financial aid, they're meeting with their professors. So those are opportunities for us to just check in with that student. So that's another way that we could. So it becomes more intentional, right? Everyone is saying, just checking in. If there's anything that I can do for you, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And if you mean that, people will feel. Again, that goes to the relationship building because we know that they're meeting with advisors on a regular basis. So. I just think those are opportunities for us to reiterate that message that we're here for you and how can we help. But, if they're meeting with somebody 4 times, 4 different people, that's 4 different opportunities for us to say, And that's how I think we can live our mission a little bit better each and every day.
Oops, that's off.
Okay.
Now it's on.
Great.
I've been writing a lot. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. I think Kenya had.
I didn't say.
Thank you.
Sorry.
All right, let's try that again. I think Dr. Lufkin and I may tag team on a few things because we have work that is very synergistic. I want to respond to your original question and then the really profound piece that Trustee Greenhill put on the table as well. So the first piece would be in terms of how we live out the mission. In terms of how we live out the mission better on a daily basis, thank you, sir, and the role of the board, the ways in which you are supporting the chancellor as we connect the dots, the strategic marketing and communication so that we aren't best kept secret, the affordable piece. There are so many people that we encounter in the community. We've learned through recent work with community education and surveying colleagues or members of our community. People want what TCC has. They don't always know that it is for them or that there is a wide array of opportunities available. And so I see some real exciting efforts going forward, but the ways in which you empower the chancellor and the institution to be able to move with new marketing, enlightened ways of funding these efforts. Technology to support onboarding is key. We've talked about that with ERP, but we certainly have that in some other places, some real need, so that what we do in onboarding is seamless from the student's perspective. We've talked a lot about students having a concierge experience so that when they come in the door, they know that they have support all the way through from enrollment through to completion. I do hope that when we do revisit the mission after the SAC-COC visit, that we'll talk about completion and how we might add that at some point. The other thing, just informationally, that will be launched this fall through CTL is a Student Ready Culture Institute in which we help the entire college understand what it means to be ready for our students demographically, in terms of what it means to offer a culture of care. And I believe that that will go a long way, 5-star student service, to support how we really see our students and how we help them experience a quality educational opportunity and to feel a part of the institution. And then the last thing I was going to say is there's some really great efforts, and so I'll hand the mic over to Dr. Lufkin, but we really are more and more often converging our work and connecting the dots so that we live out the mission on a daily basis.
Thank you, Dr. AP. I was just going to add, just pull a few things together here that really it's about maximizing and leveraging our opportunities as well as our resources. We have a variety of resources available to our students to engage them. I just think we need to pull it all together to live out the mission every day, better every day, really maximizing, leveraging those resources, more systematic, structured ways of delivery. So once we're able to converge all this work, pull it together, I think our students will be more aware of the many resources that were shared.
If I can do a yes end, I'll do the first yes end of the day as we move forward. And we're doing great work now, as you just heard from my colleagues here, under Dr. LeBlanc's leadership of really operationalizing and pulling things together. I don't know if you can hear me from here. The mission statement has been one that when we talk about, yes, we're affordable, yes, we're open access, we take the top 100% of high school graduates. We're real proud of that. And we do have some of the best teachers in the area. I really think we're moving into an area now that the mission statement isn't just for our students, but for our surrounding community. Our community is really looking to us now to solve a lot of issues that are occurring. And it's not just putting out an educated workforce. It's more of creating an environment where we have individuals that can contribute back to society, back to the communities. It's real important to always maintain that our students come from our zip codes and they stay in our zip codes. So the community is really one, especially governmental entities right now, are looking to Tarrant County College as an entity that can help to grow the city economically and really have a populace that wants to contribute back to society.
Please.
Thank you, Bill. I'm going to expand on that. So I appreciate that. So my role at the college, I'm Shannon Bryant. I'm the Executive Vice President for Corporate Solutions and Economic Development. So my role in the college is to engage every day with business and industry. So every day I'm with a CEO or executive in this community. And when I'm out visiting with businesses, what are they looking for? They're looking for a workforce. They're looking for an intern. They're looking for an apprentice. They're looking to hire our graduates. And as far as how we can live out the mission a little bit better is, number one, better engagement with business and industry. Every day I'm at companies that are very innovative that are coming to North Texas, where they are so innovative that we don't even have programming for what they're doing, from autonomous trucking to the unmanned aerial space to electric cars. And so better engagement with business and industry, and also telling the story on the other end. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about the certificate. It's not just about the associate's degree they're walking out of TCC with. When it comes to Bill, with what he was saying, it's about the economic impact. We retain more students in this community than our universities do. And the intention is that we are building a pathway for our students to come through to gain employment, making a living wage that is going to change the trajectory of their life and their family's life for the future to come, which makes a huge economic impact on this community. And so that is one piece that I do not feel where we are focusing enough efforts, because when I'm talking into employers, it's great that we highlight stories about students going off to Texas and A&M or wherever they might be going, but we need to be celebrating more of the stories of a TCC student graduates and becomes an employee of a company in Tarrant County, and that they now are on a career path for a great career here in this community. And so focusing on that type of a story and focusing on that end of it, to me, is a story that we could be doing a little bit better that plays towards the mission.
Thanks to all of you. I need to turn the lectern over to Mr. Moat to continue the conversation, but I've really appreciated all of your input, and it's very interesting taking notes and sort of looking at the expanse and hearing what I'm hearing, because there's some pretty clear patterns around communication, around students, around proactive responses, really, and looking for ways not just to operationalize, but to make these ideas actionable, right? This piece of not just having the data, but then what do we do with the data, and how are we implementing it, and how are we communicating it out? So I really appreciate all of this feedback. I think there are some really excellent ideas here. I really appreciate it. I've been taking notes. Mr. Moat has as well. I'm going to go ahead and turn the stage over to him to continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your time today and the discussion, and I was taking notes furiously as much as I could as you were talking. I've sent those notes over. Hopefully we can get those displayed here in just a second. But in terms of our next steps, we want to ensure as a part of TCC's reaffirmation process that we communicate effectively, what we do with the mission, how we live the mission, how we document with evidence within our compliance certification, which we have to send in March of 2023. And so as a part of that, we have to ensure that we are meeting the needs of the institution. And can you advance the slide for me, please? Yes. So in terms of living the mission, what I'm hearing is that many of you understand that, as a part of living the mission, we contribute in many ways. There are things that we can do better in terms of communication, especially with economic workforce, with our communication with students in terms of caring for them, ensuring that they have access to resources that they need. And these improvements can be lived through what we do every day. And we ensure through the commitment of the board that they are supporting the needs of marketing and different resources that need to be available for our students and to support those important matters. And so it's important also to recognize that as we live through fulfilling the goals of the 3G8P, that it's all strategically connected, and that we come back to the principal work in terms of what's already been done and what will be done to sustain that. So in that vein, during the retreat on June 7th, we had some discussion in terms of review of mission, vision, and values. And at that time, we had many discussions about mission, and there were some suggestions in terms of possible changes. And we started to think about where we're at in reaffirmation. We're basically a year out, or actually less than a year from sending our report in. And we want to make sure that we connect the dots in terms of what's already happened, in terms of what we have been living with 3G8P since 2017. And so ensuring that that message is conveyed in our report, because SAC-COC is not really interested in what we will do at this point, it's what we have done. And so that's why it's critical not to make major changes with the mission at this time. And so we decided to table that conversation, and we know that it's still relevant. And so we talked a lot more about the vision and the values. And in terms of the vision, there's more opportunity to discuss and explore different things, such as civic responsibility or economic impact, the global citizenship that we expect our students to have, academic excellence, and the overall choices that students make as they go through their educational pathway. We have institutional student learning outcomes, and so we want to connect those with what the state has already given us, those core objectives. So think about communication, critical thinking, teamwork, empirical quantitative reasoning, personal and social responsibility. Those are very key, and they're the same institutional learning outcomes that we have as an institution as the state has. So we mirror those, and so we want to ensure that we are delivering on that. And those are expressed in many ways in the vision statement. And so we had some 2 or 3 different ideas in terms of edits, but when working currently with the presidents in terms of bringing that to closure. We also talked a lot about the values. And so our values have been consistent since planning back in, I think, 2015. And so we have kept those same values in terms of review with 3G8P. So thinking about access, student success, diversity. These things are very important in terms of us as an institution and still relevant. However, as we move forward and started to discuss, there are some things that we could improve upon. So thinking about more inclusiveness in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, not just diversity. Also looking at people. So a priority in terms of people, supporting all people, students, employees, and how they see themselves in our values. So not necessarily just student success, but all of our success. And so those were kind of the conversations that we talked about in terms of what could be added to those values. And so we're still, it's not quite a butterfly yet, as Dr. LeBlanc would say, but it's a work in progress. And we had, of course, members of the board, members of the cabinet, Dr. LeBlanc, the presidents, the VPs. We had Shawanda Riley was present as a part of the discussion, and other district leaders on that June 7th meeting. So I feel we have many things to kind of bring to closure, but we have a good start in terms of review. We also talked about the mnemonics of having to remember the mission or the vision or the values, and how that's important not to have too many things incorporated that you can't remember. So we talked about structuring it in a way that we could have a word spelled out, such as ideas, or something that is easily remembered, because as we move forward in planning and the reaffirmation, and they actually come on site, those things are going to be important for folks to know and be able to talk about. So that's another part of it. So that retreat started the conversation. We're not quite done with that work, but we are in a good place to continue that. So I did want to share that. All right. So in terms of the mission, of course, this is an integral part of the SAC-COC reaffirmation. It's a core requirement. And so what that means is it's a foundational piece, and it's something that we must be able to approve or provide evidence as part of compliance. That's why it's so critical for this body to discuss it and to review it regularly. We are part of a differentiated review process, which we got approved for this year. And so what does that mean? So we are in good stead with SAC-COC, with our accreditor. And there are certain things that we must do in terms of meeting the obligation of a differentiated review. And so because we're in good stead, because we have done a good job with substantive change in sending in our information, we're eligible to send in less information in the report. So 80 standards, core requirements is typically what we have to send in. We're sending about half of that, so about 40 core requirements and standards. And most of that is related to the federal requirements for our institution. So that's a good place for us to be in. Also, we have the quality enhancement plan. That's a big part of the 10-year reaffirmation process. And so that is a discussion we have been working with a QEP steering team over the past year and a half. I've engaged with the campuses for feedback, looking at trends and themes, and also incorporating our work currently with the principals and where we are with those initiatives. So in terms of a timeline, we have the Certificate of Compliance, which is what goes in first. That's due March 1st, 2023. And so that's the first thing that will be reviewed by an off-site team. The Certificate of Compliance, it goes in 15 months in advance of our scheduled reaffirmation, and it demonstrates our judgment to the extent of compliance with the core requirements and standards. After the off-site team gives their report, then that gives us an opportunity to respond with a focus report if there's any questions. And then we also would send in the quality enhancement plan prior to the visit. It's not due at the same time as the certificate. But the on-site visit will happen October 16th through the 19th. And why that's important is that Board of Trustees may be engaged as a part of the conversation to be available to talk with our accreditors and discuss different aspects of the institution. And so make sure that that's on your calendars for next year to be available for that. The quality enhancement plan, we've had conversations that have resulted in a discussion about the topic, and it's related to the SAC-COC standards in terms of an ongoing comprehensive and evaluation process, which is our institutional planning, so the 3GAP work. We have to commit resources to it and include a plan to assess it. So after discussion with the cabinet, as a part of our first year experience and discussions about the student experience principle, we landed on the advising and counseling topic in terms of that intake model and where we're going to go with that. And so that's what we're exploring further with looking at the students that are identified, the first time in college students that would be coming in and needing assistance with developmental work or ensuring their retention. So that's where we're at right now. I'm working with institutional research to explore that particular target group. And we are one college. We're one accreditation. We are one entity in terms of the eyes of SAC-COC. So we have to identify those opportunities to share the experience amongst all of us, including the trustees, and aligning this messaging with the 3GAP. We're telling our story in terms of ensuring the quality and integrity of our programs and services and support of student learning. And so I heard a lot of mention about students in terms of how we live our mission. They're the key focus, and it's a part of the Student Ready Culture Institute being a student-ready centric institution. So I think all those professional development opportunities as they come forward will assist us in living through what we expect from ourselves and living the mission of the college. And so that participation with the on-site visit will be very important in October as we get closer to that time. And so I will entertain any additional questions at this time.
I just want to mention that I don't think most of the trustees here were trustees the last time we went through this, but be prepared when it comes the time for the evaluators to come, because you will participate, and I think there will be a prep meetings with the Board of Trustees, with each one of us to prepare for this, because it's very, very important conversation that you have with these evaluators.
Go ahead, El.
Thank you for
that.
bringing that up, because yes, usually the chair of the committee, of the reaffirmation committee, will want to visit with the trustees, and there's a whole list of questions typically that they ask. They ask about the trustees' engagement and just really have conversations about your role as
Right.
trustees. So that's increased over time. Used to be if a trustee was available, that was nice. Now, no, the trustee will be available. There is no, if you could make it, that'd be nice. So these conversations are important. And of course, we will continue giving the board updates, as we get closer to being visited. An incredible amount of work has been done in terms of the compliance piece. And we have a few minutes. Marlon, you may share a little bit about the QEP and how we've come up with a topic and so on.
Absolutely. And so the QEP steering team, as I said, has been meeting. It's comprised of faculty and support staff from service areas and from institutional research. So it's a team of about 30 people And we've been working in work groups in terms of the criteria that we chose for evaluating the topic. There are certain things that SAC-COC expects us to do, but in addition to that, we want to make sure that it aligns with 3G8P, that it is evaluated and supports student success in terms of our planning, and that it moves the needle in terms of students being able to attain and be retained at the institution. And so getting those degrees transfer those workforce jobs, and it's important in terms of preparing students to be on the right path. And so that team also worked with engagement. So I had presentations that I made with each of the campuses. We talked and I captured information about their feedback. We had over 300 survey responses. And as a part of that, we had 3 things that came up as a high-level topic selection that met the criteria. So advising counseling, first-year experience, as well as boot camps for students and engaging those students as they enter into the institution and preparing. So after all those discussions and discussions with the cabinet, we wanted to be very consistent with the topic and not being too broad, because that's a part of the SAC-COC evaluation is it too broad? Can you actually execute? And so we wanted to ensure that by that, the first year experience is very broad. And so that was kind of where we landed first, but then after further discussion, focusing on the advising and counseling and intake model component was more realistic. So that's where we landed at this time.
So typically the QEP is to be focused on faculty and their work and their contribution. So I know I'm putting them on a spot, but I'd like to hear a little bit from the faculty as to their observation on the topic.
I like the topic. I think that what it does is it makes us intentional about starting a conversation from the moment the student gets here about their track and what their plans are, and then to have touch points for making sure that they are acclimated, because being a student is a whole different type of thing. And a lot of times, a lot of the gaps and barriers occur because people don't know the mechanisms of being a student. And I remember, because I'm a first-time in college graduate, and I had to learn it all myself. And because I was the student type, then I figured it out. But I can only imagine that the students that we see most often, who we serve here at this institution, don't have the capacity or the luxury to have to tackle those additional barriers. So I think that, focusing on advising that first-year experience, helping students to figure out what it means to be a student and how to navigate this culture, this space, this organization, which is different and separate from everything else they're doing in their lives, the way that we can move them through that seamlessly and helping them mitigate those barriers, I think is going to provide awesome opportunities for us to create more success for our students and for faculty, because it makes us think about the conversations. Like, we're dealing with low enrollment. I can't just think that my classes are going to be populated. I need to be actively talking to my students about next steps, right? So we become partners in a conversation about appreciative advising and what are you doing and what are your plans, and here are some classes you may consider. And so I think that it will include all of us.
And to follow up on what Tia said, students in classes, they want to know, like she said, what the next steps are. Near the end of the semester, you start asking, have you registered for your classes? And they're like, how do I do that? We're like, well, how did you do it previously? So it seems like, kind of going up to some of the things that we said earlier, it's the communication piece, and I think focusing on that first year experience would definitely be beneficial to students, because students want to get engaged. Working with the student organizations like Phi Theta Kappa, once students find kind of their group, people call it their tribe, those students do extremely well. Phi Theta Kappa students, people think it's because they're the type A and they're smart. That's a part of it, but it's really because they have a cohort and a group that they connect with that are like-minded. And if as part of that first-year student experience, we can get students who may not be Phi Theta Kappa material in terms of GPA, but in terms of interest, whether it's a Star Wars. I think we had a lightsaber club on the Northeast campus a few years ago. I don't know if that's still in existence, but the students, they liked having that group, right? And so I think if you build into that first-year student experience, showing them the importance not just of what the engagement is, but how the engagement can then impact how well they do in their classes, I think that would be beneficial.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Marlon. So,
Yes.
and thank the faculty for that. So we'll need to wrap this up.
Yes. Those are the only other things that I had to discuss for today. I typed up all the notes, so we have those available to you. We'll capture that, and that will be a part of our ongoing conversation with the presidents about when we talk about the vision and the values. So this will be continued, and we'll have further discussion at another time.
Thank you so much, Marlon. It was
Thank you so much.
good discussion around our purpose and our commitments, and it's going to take all of us. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so we have another presentation. Why don't we just take a 5-minute stretch break, and so we can bring on the next speaker. So, yes, thank you.
He does.
Oh, yeah.
We knew. Yeah. He used to have to get on my contracts. My vice president was.
Next speaker, Dr. Jason Saving. He is a public finance and regional economist at the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas and Director of Research and Studies in Community Development. Dr. Saving conducts research on issues including tax reform, regional migration, income inequality, and the interplay between political polarization and fiscal policy. His articles have appeared in scholarly journals such as Economic Inquiry, Southern Economic Journal, and the National Tax Journal. Dr. Saving has also written policy-relevant articles on state and local fiscal issues that impact Texas and the 11th Federal Reserve District. Among the questions he has examined are why property taxes rose so rapidly in the years after the Great Recession, whether the poor bear a disproportionate share of the state's overall tax burden, and why Texas has a relatively low percentage of people covered by health insurance. A recurring theme of these articles is that public policy decisions have important consequences for equity and economic efficiency. He has extremely impressive credentials from Rice University and California Institute of Technology. So please help me welcome Dr. Jason Saving.
Gosh, thank you very much for that kind introduction. So my name is Jason Saving, and as you mentioned, I am employed by the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas. In Dallas, we cover the 11th of 12 Federal Reserve districts for the United States, which includes all of Texas and portions of Louisiana and New Mexico. A lot of the work that I do relates to inclusive economic growth and how to make sure that we're bringing everyone into the economic mainstream. And a lot of my thinking there is that we, as a metroplex, as a state, as a country, have gotten so much more diverse than we used to be. And as we get more diverse, just mathematically stands to reason that if you want the city, the state, the country to grow faster, you've got to look out for everybody and make sure that everybody can achieve a high standard of living, which, as an economist, and with all of you guys, do you know this as well, you have got to get there by education. That is the surest route to being able to contribute more to wherever you're going to be employed, and contributing more is the best way that we've got to earn more. And especially with historical inequities, systemic discrimination in all of its various guises, not everybody is like me, where their parents went to college and it was sort of understood that is what you would do, especially when you're first generation or your parents may have very little wealth. It's just critically important that you have places like this community college district to be that bridge for people in high school who, well, why am I telling you guys this? You already know all of this, but I just believe in it so strongly, the role that you guys have in helping everybody, but especially people of color who might have experienced many disadvantages, to be able to get better educated and have higher income, which helps all of us down the road. So just, I should be the one thanking you for allowing me to come and speak to you this morning. So thank you very much for all that you do. So with all that said, let me get into the meat of my presentation, which is in large measure going to be, how are we doing right now as a region? What is the economic data showing? And that'll be most of the presentation today. And the rest will be, what are the challenges that we face for the future? So before I get to that, though, let me get into where have we been and where are we heading? Pre-COVID, let your mind drift back. I guess that's been, just over 2 years now. So going into January of 2020, if I'd been speaking to you today, what I would have been telling you is a pretty standard economic presentation. The Texas economy is growing at a solid pace. Unemployment is at or near its record low. Job growth is in line with its long-run average. Personal income is at an all-time high. This would have been a very standard thing that I would have been saying in 2017, 2018, 2019. In retrospect, how I wish I could have kept being standard for 2020, 2021, and 2022. I guess there's this old proverb, right? May you live in interesting times. And as an economist, I certainly feel like that has happened. March, April, May of 2020, we saw a shockingly fast decline in all of the economic aggregates that we track. The unemployment rate for the state shot up to 13.5%, and we lost about 1 in 9 to 1 in 10 jobs for the Metroplex and for the state. We've never seen anything like that. And I'm going to document that for you this morning, that we've never seen anything like that. To what extent have we recovered since that time? Can we expect, as a Metroplex and as a state, to resume our historic growth advantage over the rest of the country? And what are the long-term risks that might prevent us from doing that? And at the risk of spoiling myself, one of those risk areas is education. It's not the only one, but it is one of those risk areas where if we falter, we can expect to not resume that historic growth advantage over the rest of the country. So jumping into the data, and for every one of these slides, I will try to give you 2 or 3 clear takeaways that you can take away from this presentation, even if you're not used, like I am, to seeing these kinds of graphs and numbers each day. Or if you're like me before my cataract surgery a year ago and just have trouble seeing some of these charts, that is okay. Do not worry about that at all. You keep doing your thing, uplifting people who need education, and I'll do my thing, and it'll be great for every one of us. So just don't worry if you struggle to see or fully understand one of these charts. Not a problem. So now I'm showing you annual job growth over the last 30 years for the state of Texas in blue and the U.S. in red. I'm only showing you up to 2020. I'll have a future slide, in like 1 minute, that will show you what's happened currently. But what we were seeing from 1990 to 2020, look again, blue versus red. Takeaway number 1, blue is almost always above red, meaning the state of Texas in almost every year grows faster than the rest of the country. Takeaway number 2, there were 2 exceptions to that. One exception was 2000 and 2001, the tax bust, which hurt Texas harder than the rest of the country. So we lost our growth advantage. We weren't worse than the rest of the country, but we grew at roughly the same pace as the rest of the country. Let me call your attention also to the energy bust, like 2015, 2016. If you look toward the right-hand side of the chart, you see that the red line, again the United States, is actually above the blue bars for those years, because Texas remains one of 8 states that benefit overall from high energy prices. Living in the city of Richardson, not owning any land that has mineral rights to anything, I don't personally benefit from high energy prices. I only suffer through higher prices when I go to Walmart or wherever I might shop and filling up my tank. But the state as a whole, there are enough people that do benefit from energy prices being high that, like I said, we're one of 8 states that overall benefit. So that is why for 2014, 2015, a bit of 2016, we saw those trends that we saw. But let me finally turn your attention to 2020. 2020, actually, for the sake of time, let me go ahead and turn to my next slide so I can make 2 points at once. Point number 1, 2020, we fell into a deep, deep hole for both the state and the nation. You can see that bar now second from the right. We've never seen a bar like that. And in all those years that I was currently showing you, I guess it's 1993 up until 2021, job growth for 2020 was as negative as it had ever been in any of those years. And remember, those years included the Great Recession. And we thought then, wow, this is unprecedented. Surely this will never happen again. For the state of Texas and for the Metroplex, even the tech bust of 2000, 2001, we definitely felt the slowing during that period of time. Those were just, all right, so the Great Recession was close overall to 2020, but not as bad. The tech bust, not even in the same ballpark. 2021 now, you can see the very right-hand bar on this slide. 2021, we regained much of those job losses, though not all of them. This was true for both the state and the nation, though the nation has farther to go. As of the beginning of the year, we were one of the first 4 or 5 states to reach pre-COVID employment levels. You might think, well, fantastic. That means we were back where we should have been if COVID never would have happened. And just to be very, very clear, that is not what that means. All that it means is, I'll try to do a quick visual aid with my hands. My kids tell me I'm highly imperfect with that, so please forgive me for that, but I'll do my best. So we're sort of going up, we're going up at a reasonably rapid pace. Had COVID never struck, for all of 2020, 2021, we would have kept going up at that rapid pace. But instead, COVID strikes, we plummet. We've just now gotten back to where we were in February of 2020. But keep in mind, otherwise we would have been going up for those 2 years. So we sort of, this is what would have happened. We go down, we get back to where we were. Yay, fantastic. And sure, it's a first step toward getting back to where we would have been had COVID never occurred. But we're still well behind where we would have been. Not to rain anybody's parade, we had to get back to February 2020. I mean, if you don't do that, you're not going to get to where you should have been had COVID never happened in the first place. But we got a long way to go in order to regain that ground. Plus, we know that a lot of people disproportionately who lost jobs were either women or people of color, especially African Americans, or both. So there's that nexus between people who've faced some disadvantages that maybe I personally didn't have to face. But, just because I didn't have to face them doesn't mean I can't speak their name, because if you don't speak their name out of political correctness or whatever it might be, when things have actually happened, my view is you have to be willing to say historically that they happened in order to address the inequities that resulted from them. So I say this not to make anybody feel bad, but to illustrate that sometimes as an economist, we can get wrapped up in there are lines on a chart and forgetting about the human faces that lie behind those lines on the chart. So I just want to make sure in our conversation today, we don't lose sight of the lines on the chart matter, but the people behind them matter even more, especially since not everybody lost jobs at an equal rate during COVID. I'll return to those points later, but just wanted to make sure that I previewed them now so we all are thinking about how important those inequities are. All right, so now 2021, like I said, and as you can see from the line on the far right here, we regained a lot of the jobs that were lost. In January, February, we got back to having regained all of them. And now we were starting to make up that gap. But starting is not finishing. So now I'm sort of zooming in a bit to show you 2022 to date. And so I'm sorry I can only show you now the last decade because just for zooming in, I just can't show you as much. But 2022 year to date, we've grown about as fast as we did during 2021, which is pretty remarkable because 2021 growth was so much faster than our historical norm. As I think you saw from this chart here, sorry, flip back for just a moment. So we've continued climbing so far in 2022. I did sort of shading on that 2022 bar just to emphasize that while I hope that for the rest of the year we will continue to grow at a rapid pace, I would love if that happened. Mathematically, it is not possible that forever we can grow at the rapid pace of 2021. You know, fingers crossed, but we'll talk later on about why it's probably not exceptionally likely that the rest of the year will give us the great job growth news that we had in the first quarter of 2022. But so far, for the months that we have in the can, so to speak, 2022 job growth has not slowed markedly from what we were doing in 2021. All right, so now I'm going to zoom in further and just very quickly show you a quarter by quarter look at job growth for, the state in blue and the U.S. in red. A couple of takeaways from this chart. Takeaway number one, take a look at the second quarter of 2020. It is difficult to miss because it is the one on this chart where the bottom fell out. Job growth declining at an annual rate of like negative 25%. So this is slightly wrong mathematically, but just for the sake of effect, I'll say it. You know, minus 25%, 25%, 50, 75, 100. You know, if that had continued for like the whole year, then almost all the jobs in the economy would have been gone. In all of my years at the Fed, so I joined in 1996, there's never been a quarter. There was even remotely, not even during the Great Recession, there's never been a quarter remotely like this. So if it felt to you like the bottom was falling out, it was in that quarter. As far as I know, in state history, back to the first half of the 1800s, there's never been a quarter like this. Though I always throw out caveats and as economists, so we don't know. There wasn't data collected that was like that. So I firmly believe it to be true that there's never been a quarter like this. But we only started doing modern data collection in the 20th century. So I don't know this for sure, but I'm very confident of it. So it's just very striking looking at this chart just how bad it was. The other thing not to lose sight of, though, is if you look at all the all the blue bars to the right of the second quarter of 2020, every one of those have been pretty good compared to those normal blue bars on the left. You know, every quarter that we've had since the second quarter of 2020, we've experienced historically large job growth. It's just that COVID shock, March, April, May of 2020, was so massive and affected so many people for losing their jobs that it's taken all those quarters since of historically large job growth to get back to where we were. I'll show you one chart a bit later where I'm able to focus on that even a little bit more than I've done here. But it's just, if it looks very striking, it's because it is historically exceptionally striking, the impact that COVID had on the labor market. So I'm going to, for just a bit, talk to you, and I'm not looking at my phone because I'm bored, only to make sure that I don't run out of time. So just please know that. I'm sure you've been there as well when you're giving talks. So, all right. Here I'm showing you the major portions of the economy, and this is for the state. Trade and transportation, government, leisure and hospitality, energy, some other things. You can look at this chart at your leisure. It's not worth going into it in great detail for what I'm trying to tell you, what we're talking about today. But I do want to mention two sectors of the state economy that have been particularly impacted over the last couple of years. One, leisure and hospitality, which is basically at the center of this chart. 2020, the light blue bar, massive hit. Same for energy on the far right. It might be hard to remember with energy prices what they are now, but back in 2020 and 2019, really, although I'm not showing you that year, the energy sector lost a bunch of jobs, and energy prices weren't at all what they are now. But I'd rather focus more on leisure and hospitality, which is at the center of the chart, just because that relates more directly to COVID-19. So COVID-19 strikes sectors that are built on close human contact and our desire to, go new places, see new things, or go to, bars, restaurants, hotels. I mean, you want to have fun. Well, if having fun is going to make you sick, you don't want to do it. So we saw leisure and hospitality in particular take just a massive hit to their economic contribution to the Metroplex and to the state. Now, San Antonio felt it more than we did, since they were more tourism-centric than we are. But the whole state felt it. So you can see there that light blue bar for leisure and hospitality way down. 2021, it came back substantially, though not completely. And I'm just going to say here, I was going to go into this in more detail, but there's more stuff that I'd rather get into in more detail. So I'll simply say this slide, for the sake of your packet, this slide shows you the same information, but for 2022. And you can see that every sector, except for, ironically, government employment, has continued to recover in 2022. And this is not an uncommon trend for government employment, that a recession strikes and you sort of hope it'll be short. Plus, during a recession, people need more services than they typically do. They're hungry. They've lost their job. They need help. So they tap government more heavily than they would during an expansion. And you don't want to be laying people off in government at the precise time when government is getting overworked. But then, as the recession ends and things start getting back to normal, and government has sort of overstretched during that period of time, it's not uncommon for government employment growth to slow or even go in reverse a bit as sort of a compensating factor for what the private sector did a year or two before. So this is I'm not saying it's not painful, but it's just a trend that you sort of expect to see when you follow these numbers. All right, so now I'm switching over for one slide, job growth in our major cities: Houston, Dallas, Austin, Fort Worth, San Antonio. Let me linger on this a bit and give you a couple of key takeaways. Takeaway one, the lightest bar, which is sort of the far left for each city, we were all growing in 2019, shortly before COVID-19. Like I mentioned, the state economy, we were doing pretty well, and so were all of our major cities. COVID strikes, 2020, those are the bars that are negative for each and every major city in the state. Though some were more negative than others, Dallas and Austin were less negative than Fort Worth, and Fort Worth was less negative than San Antonio and Houston. I mentioned to you just a minute ago that leisure and hospitality and energy were two sectors that suffered in 2020, though, as we all know, energy is not suffering now. But for 2020, it's not surprising that Houston and San Antonio would be the two major cities in the state that would have suffered most, since San Antonio is heavily tourism dependent, and Houston, of course, very energy dependent. 2021, 2022, every city has recovered. Not at exactly the same pace, but it's good news that every city in the state, every major city anyway on this side, and most of the smaller ones as well, had positive job growth for both of those years. This slide shows you the unemployment rate for the state. I hope I did the same colors. I did. Excellent. So for the state of Texas in blue and the U.S. in red. 3 takeaways from this chart. Takeaway 1, the middle of the chart is the Great Recession, where you can see that the unemployment rate rose substantially. And we thought, wow, this is really, really bad. Unemployment rate for the state is like 8%. We'd like it to be 4%. It doubled. Surely it'll never be this bad again. Well, take a look toward the right-hand side of the chart, and I didn't label the second quarter of 2020, but I trust I didn't need to. It's very obvious where the second quarter of 2020 is. Unemployment rate shooting up above 12-13%. Remarkable that it happened in the space of 1 quarter. We've never seen the unemployment rate grow that fast in that period of time ever in state history. We've come down substantially to just over 4%, and the nation to under 4%. So we've gotten close to where we were with the unemployment rate before, where we were before COVID-19. But the decline in the unemployment rate, how fast it's coming down, has slowed markedly. And many of those who remain unemployed are people of color who, when you're out of work for more than a year to a year and a half, at the risk of using a little bit of economic jargon, labor market scarring starts to take effect on you. What I mean by that is when you're out of work for a while, your skills start eroding. As your skills start eroding, jobs that you could have gotten maybe relatively easily pre-COVID are more difficult to get. So as this is stretched, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, I've frankly begun to worry that those who have still been left out of the job market recovery may be left out for a long time, are at risk of transitioning to longer-term unemployed. And as that happens, people who could have been on a good path for their wages, for their income, for their family, it gets a lot harder at that point when your skills have eroded. And it might mean going back to community college to learn a new job, new occupation, or at least to get refreshed in the occupation where these folks were. So I bring that up to say, in many ways, as important as you guys were, as the Tarrant district was in this first year or two of the recovery, in some ways, you may be even more important now in getting people upskilled and reskilled so they can get reintegrated into the labor force going forward. Last bit of labor market slides for you. And then depending on time, I may do more things. But labor market's the most important, the most relevant for you guys. So I'm now showing you initial claims for unemployment insurance. So you just lost your job and you're applying for unemployment insurance to be a temporary buffer while you get back on your feet. A great thing about this data series from an economist's point of view is that it's weekly. And we find out the numbers within a couple of weeks of when a week happened. So this is the single timeliest measure that we've got of what's happening with labor markets overall. I don't know how much I need to say to give you the takeaways, given I provided labeling, but what the heck, I'll say it anyway. So takeaway number one, we see the Great Recession and Harvey on this chart. They were huge spikes compared to what initial claims normally do. And if I were speaking to you in like 2018, what I would have been telling you is those were like historically unprecedented spikes in claims for unemployment insurance, and it illustrated just how bad the job market was at the peak of the Great Recession or in that month that Hurricane Harvey struck. I sure hope we never reach those lofty peaks again because they were awful. Which leads me to the second takeaway, April, May of 2020, which I've labeled COVID-19, even though, of course, I know COVID has continued, so I don't mean those were like the only weeks when that happened, but the worst weeks of COVID-19 were those first weeks in April and May of 2020. I mentioned that we lost 1 in 9 to 1 in 10 of our jobs for Fort Worth, DFW, the state of Texas. We've never seen anything like that before. And this chart, more than any other, because it's weekly, really lets us see how bad April in particular of 2020 was. This is like 7, 8, 9, 10 times normal levels for initial claims. I should have looked that up in advance to know the multiplier. I don't know how much of a multiple that was, but you can see here, eyeballing it, it looks like it's about 10 times what they would normally be. People sort of hoped, well, maybe we'll get back to normal shortly. And as we got through 2020, we did see a partial recovery in the labor market, which continued in 2021, so I don't want to understate that. But still, you look at sort of almost the right-hand side of the chart where we kind of stabilized for that second half of 2020 and a lot of 2021. Still, where we stabilized was roughly the spike for the Great Recession, which we thought at the time, sure hope we never do this again. And that was where we were for like a whole year for initial claims. I find that incredible as an economist that we could have thought that stabilizing at Great Recession peak was, we're doing okay now. And we were compared to how bad that peak was, but still, even where we stabilized was just awful compared to where we'd be normally. And I hope this slide illustrates that for you. So fast forward, finally, to the beginning of 2022, where initial claims are reaching and even getting a bit below pre-COVID levels. Though in recent weeks, there's been sort of a bit of an uptick in initial claims amid some signs that, maybe things are cooling somewhat in the job market compared to how they'd been until recent weeks. And this is a great time to remind everybody of that caveat on my cover slide, which is I am speaking to you. I'm proud to be employed by the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, don't get me wrong, but I'm not speaking for the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas or the Federal Reserve System in any of the remarks that I am making. Basically what that means is if I make an error, then it is my fault, and it is not the fault of the Dallas Fed or the Federal Reserve System. As board members, you guys probably don't make errors, but I make them from time to time. I apologize for any that I make here, but I do take full responsibility for them, that it is just me and not the Dallas Fed or the Federal Reserve System that made the mistake. All right, so with that out of the way, let me not cover most of these specifics for the state economy. You always like to have extra slides in case you need them, but what matters for us, for our story, is this summary and then a couple of slides after this for challenges they relate to the area of education. So, summary of everything that I said, plus those few slides that I skipped over. The number of jobs in the state have now surpassed pre-COVID levels, but again, that doesn't mean we're back to where we would have been. There's still work to do. Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, they're all growing, and that's great. That's a very good thing. One thing that I would have told you in graphs, but instead I'll tell you just verbally, is the service sector suffered more than the manufacturing sector in this COVID era. That's very unusual. Normally in a recession, manufacturing suffers a lot more than services. World markets are affected, trade is affected, trade is mainly manufacturing, so manufacturing gets hit really hard. Some of you might remember that during the Great Recession, there was this term that floated around in the popular press that economists don't use called the man session. I don't know if any of you guys, so some of you guys remember that press coverage. The reason for that was that manufacturing was hit so much harder than services, and men disproportionately are employed in manufacturing, whereas women disproportionately are employed in services. Obviously not completely, but just disproportionately. So this was really the first recession in recent memory that mainly struck the service sector. So therefore, like 55 to 60% of layoffs were women, whereas normally it might be like 35 to 40%. I hope that beeping's not because of me. I'll assume that it isn't. So the service sector being affected was a difference. Current forecasts call for above average 2022 growth for DFW and Texas. But please remember this sub-bullet at the bottom of this slide. Forecasts can never anticipate things we didn't expect. That may sound trite, but it's true. And I'm sure for a lot of your forecasts for the community college district, you see the same thing. Well, gosh, I didn't expect that. And then suddenly numbers are off compared to what you thought. If things don't go as we expect, if supply chain issues continue for longer than we thought or hoped that they would, there are always things that Congress and the Fed do. I can't talk about them today, but there are just a lot of things that can happen that are different than what we thought would happen. So it is very possible that the economy would not do as well as current forecasts are calling for. We'll just have to wait and see. But I'm not here to give you a forecast. Luckily, today I'm not here for that. But just bear that in mind. And there are many reasons to think that growth would be slower in the remainder of the year than it's been so far. All right, so implications for inclusive growth. This is my second to last slide. The service sector suffered disproportionately during the recession, which mattered for women. Minority workers disproportionately lost their jobs and have disproportionately struggled to regain them. We saw the same thing to some degree happen during the Great Recession. Many of you may remember that. As Fort Worth, Fort Worth, Tarrant County, DFW, the state, all of us are getting much more diverse. Some at a faster pace than others, but it's occurring everywhere. We cannot leave people behind. Back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, it was ethically wrong to leave anybody behind. But now it's not only ethically wrong, but critical for the economy that we not leave anybody behind. Because when all of the groups that we look at are a much larger chunk of the economy, leaving them behind imposes much greater harm on everybody than it used to be. So I guess to do sort of a one-sentence summary of that, it's even more of an economic necessity now than it was then to make sure the growth is inclusive and shared by everyone. And education is, to my mind, the most important key to that. Because let's not kid ourselves, minorities having fewer opportunities for many, many years in the past helped to create the wealth gap that we now see today between minorities and whites. And even if we could eliminate discrimination today and provide equal opportunity to everybody, and I trust you all agree with me when I say we've not done that, but even if we did it, it's not a level playing field when wealth gaps are as large as they are. So we cannot take our eye off of that inclusive economy ball, even on days when we feel like we've made some progress on some of these fronts in helping people to better understand that we're all in this together. So the last slide that I've got for you today is longer-term challenges for Tarrant County, DFW, and the state. Our K through 12 test scores our test scores are about at the national average. Our K through 12 funding per capita is well below the national average. Now, in some ways, well, great. Our K through 12 teachers are doing a wonderful job with the resources they are allocated. And you'd be right to say that. My kids went through public school in our ISD. We didn't really think about having them go elsewhere. They learned a ton. I'm grateful for what K through 12 public did for my kids. But being at the national average, when each year jobs require more in terms of education and learning than they ever did before, really be better if you want to go faster than the national average to have test scores that are above the national average. Getting there is going to take work. So our road and bridge infrastructure, civil engineering groups every year do an annual report card. And we're average to a bit below relative to the rest of the country. Now, being average is better than being number 50 out of the 50 states, for sure. No argument there. But again, if you want to grow at an above average pace, it's helpful to have an above average infrastructure. And finally, we've got the largest share of uninsured residents in the country. I could give a whole nother talk on what to do about that. There's not time to get into that now, except to say these things matter for our output. if people are not covered by medical insurance, they may take more sick leave. And every time people are unexpectedly out, then your production is going to be suffering. Apart from any ethical things, which also matter, but there's not time to get into here. So our big question is, how, as a state, do we balance this imperative of maintaining a relatively low per capita tax burden, which probably has contributed to us growing faster than the rest of the country, while also addressing these many issues, some of which may require more funding in order to address. Thankfully, my time is up, so I am actually, but joking aside, this is really the issue of our time. How to square this circle and find a way to do all of these things at once. Because I promise you, many of our competitors in other states, in other countries, they're trying to balance these things too. And if other states or other countries do a better job than we do in finding a way to keep growth strong and including everybody, we cannot be assured that for all time, DFW, Texas, the U.S., will grow faster than everybody else. Probably, the Rome, the UK in its day, probably all these guys that were giants striding, across the world, probably thought it's never going to end. And it can always end if we're not careful. So please, you guys, keep doing what you're doing, giving people opportunities to get more education than they were, because that really is the way to get everybody of all backgrounds to a more prosperous future. So I just thank you so much for inviting me. And if there's time for any questions, I'm happy to take them. But you guys tell me when that time is up. But I just so appreciate the opportunity to share this information with you. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Saban. We appreciate that. It was very informative, and it's very telling, some of these numbers. So does anyone have any questions or clarifications? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. My name is Shannon Bryant, and I'm the Executive Vice President here for what's called Corporate Solutions and Economic Development. And so a couple of questions for you. First of all, I do a magazine for the college focused on workforce and economic development, and I would love to highlight you in our November edition, talking about some of the things today, if you would be willing to do so.
Just be in touch with me.
I would love to get your contact information. But second, from a community college perspective, so we are frequently involved in meetings pertaining to economic development of bringing and retaining companies in the region. And so as an economist, I'm curious to know what your thoughts are as to us as a community college, in this community being one of the top 20 largest community colleges in the country. How do we best tout or tell our story regarding to our economic impact and our value proposition as far as in this community of drawing those businesses and keeping those businesses here? Just looking to what maybe some of your thoughts might be.
So it's a wonderful question, and I think I mentioned that I live over in Richardson, and we have had some of those same issues for us with, say, Texas Instruments and other companies, and other parts of the state have similar concerns. And one thing I would say right off the bat is that the community college district does matter for attracting and retaining companies, because a lot of the workers in these companies, they're trying to look at what are the educational opportunities that are available, where we might want to locate. Whether it is the community college district, whether it is like TCU or other, four-year universities that are close by. These things matter a lot. Another thing that I think matters is that you guys in particular, much more than a lot of four-year institutions sometimes, understand that credentials, courses that may not even be part of a degree, but do provide training. You know, these things all matter to companies that might be looking around. And I mean, as I've watched you guys from afar, I feel like you're pretty nimble in terms of making some of these adjustments to not everybody is necessarily enrolling with an eye toward, 4 years from now getting a bachelor's degree in some field, and then they'll weigh, do I want to get a master's in something or sort of stay? But a lot of people are coming to a community college because they want to elevate their skill set so they can then work. And these are two equally valid tracks. I mean, the one that I took, I loved school. So for me, it was a natural fit to do as much school as I could and then do a job that would be research in nature. For a lot of my friends, I couldn't repair something if my life depended on it. It would just not be possible for me because my mind doesn't work in that way. But a lot of my friends, they're great at that. And maybe, writing an academic paper would not be their, that would not be their ideal way to spend a career. And just the recognition that none of these paths are better than any other, and all are necessary, all are critical for the economy to keep growing. All of us having this opportunity to specialize in what we can do best and then give back to everybody in that way that we do best. And tying that back to economic development, seems to me that firms have demands for labor across the gamut of educational attainment. That for some jobs, a master's or even a PhD may be the credential they're looking for. Other jobs, a bachelor's degree. Others, an associate's. Others, a 1 semester or 1 year sequence that's not an associate's, but is a credential that would be recognized and would matter. Or for some people, just boning up on their knowledge of a particular subject, taking just 1 or 2 classes. And then, taking that knowledge back to their company and being able to contribute more. So it seems to me that full range of educational offerings is important for being attracted to a company who might be debating between, well, I won't say Tarrant and Dallas County because I live in Dallas County, so I won't say that is the dilemma. But let's say Tarrant County versus some generic other county in the state that's not part of the Metroplex, and or some other state, and they're weighing, some other state, or maybe I'll come to Tarrant County. That broad mix of offerings, I think, is critical. And again, this is me speaking as me, not as the Dallas Fed, because the Dallas Fed can't recommend anything like that. But I'm sure we'd be endorsing, as much economic development as everybody can do, because one of our charges is to do our part to foster economic growth. Paraphrasing, our mandate, but that's one of the things we certainly look at. So, and I certainly firmly believe, the better that your community college district can do to be nimble, to have the highest quality offerings you can in all these ways that your people are telling you firms want, that is a gigantic element of the whole county. I mean, not the only element. I don't want to say that it is, but it's the element that you guys can affect and partially control. And I mean, you're doing great, but doing even better, will make Tarrant even more attractive and being even more nimble. And I work, where I work, it's a large employer as well, just like you guys are large, it's not always easy to be nimble when you're big and when you've done things certain ways for a long time. And endeavoring to be nimble, it's challenging. It is. And I mean, you've done it, you've lived it, just, keep doing it. And I'm sure the credentials that firms are looking for today will be different than the ones 5 years from now that tell you that they want. And you'll probably be thinking, well, should we create a program for this new credential, or is this a flash in the pan? I'm sure you've had those conversations many times, trying to weigh things like that. You have the expertise, not me, to be able to make those decisions. But seems to me, as an economist, that it's only natural that as industries, as companies sort of churn around and new ones rise, old ones fall, workers move from one to the other, I'm not surprised that the demands that companies would have for different credentials would be changing over time. And just, keeping your eye on that. I mean, to me, would be really a key thing that a community college district could do to foster economic development going forward. And just not to forget what a vital role you play, not just for economic development, but also for, for giving so many people opportunities that otherwise wouldn't have had them. I mean, it just is such a huge victory when somebody who maybe never would have heard of a FAFSA, if not for efforts that you guys made to reach out and let them know, we want you to come. A lot of people may never have heard that. And here are ways that we can plug you in to the community college ecosystem. You thought it was going to be hard, but we're here for you. And I know you guys do that. And I've seen with some of my friends growing up that didn't have that. And it was just such a challenge. How do we make our way into something that's not traditional, college, grad school, all the rest of it? And it's like we're lost for how do we do this? So I'm excited by what you guys do, what you're going to keep doing. I'm really excited to see what the future is. I'm also excited about, Dallas County's district, Collins, all the rest. I mean, but you guys have done great work, and I would love to see that continue. Again, speaking for myself, not for the Fed, but just for me personally. I mean, I am so honored that you even considered it worth your time to hear from me. And I hope in some small way I have given back with my knowledge to you things that will help you to better accomplish your missions. And just thank you so much.
I have just one comment. We are also advocates on a statewide level in regard to the mission of community colleges, and I would dare you to contact what's called the TACC and the CATT, our organizations, to testify before the state legislature in the next session. Thank you.
I'll take that as a compliment, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a next group.
Could I just
So
make
next
a quick...
is,
Mr. Barr has an.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to make a quick observation. I think Dr. Savings' comment right here at the end about it's easy, we'll help you, you can do it. I think that needs to be a part of the message we're communicating, because I think there are a lot of people out there, they're intimidated by the process. They don't know how to start. Nobody in the family's done it in the past. I think that there may be a really good message in there. It's easy. You can do it. We'll help you. I'd like for us to sort of explore that. I think that might be worthwhile.
Very good point. Good observation. Thank you.
Good message.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If we're just going to continue on to the next topic. If you need to stretch, just stand up, but we're just going to continue with our, I think there's some mints over there. Can we pass them this way so I can, please?
You ready for me to get started?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to make a quick introduction. So we had wanted to follow up on some of the concerns that you've heard about human resources and to more fully describe some of the challenges that they're facing as an organization. Essentially, as you just heard, our people are the backbone of this organization, and we're in a very difficult labor market right now as we continue to try to hire talent and bring it into the organization. And at the same time, our HR department has been asked to step up and adapt a lot to a new role in the organization and to be more strategic. That's been stressful and change-oriented in ways that you've seen manifest itself. So we did a couple of things. We wanted to make sure that we were listening to the concerns within the department. And so I've got Hannah Fitzgerald here, who has done a thorough assessment and a listening tour with people who work and did work in HR to understand what opportunities are. But we also wanted an opportunity for Gloria Maddox-Powell, who's the very capable leader of HR and guiding and leading all this change, to visit with you about some of the things that have occurred since then and action plans going forward, and to describe over the last 5 years the substantial change that has occurred within the department that sort of led us to this point. We'll also put that in the larger context of not only does HR have to learn to operate with people in a post-COVID world, they're supporting the whole organization doing that, and the organization overall is experiencing some of those same stresses with staffing and the Great Resignation and so on. So you'll have an opportunity to hear that. But with that, I'll turn it over to Hannah to share with you what she learned in her review first.
Good morning, and my name is Hannah Fitzgerald, and I really do appreciate you all having me here today. I'm a labor and employment attorney at Locke Lord, and as you're aware, based on Susan's introduction, as you may be aware, also I was engaged to review the Human Resources Department and look into any issues that may be going on. Sorry. So more specifically, I was engaged to conduct interviews of the department personnel to evaluate if there were any systemic issues around the culture and morale of the department. Now, when you do come into a situation like this, you kind of expect morale might be low, and that's why you're looking into the issues. However, I will say that I received valuable feedback, and everyone that I spoke with was generally open with me throughout the process. I really wanted to provide a space where people felt comfortable speaking to me and sharing any concerns that they may have. And I felt like I was able to do that. I was able to provide a fair and open forum for current and former employees to express any concerns that they may have had. I really felt like I had a good idea of what was going on with the department and any issues that may need to be addressed. The interviews that I had ranged anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours, depending on how much employees did end up having to share with me. I will say one of the tough decisions in a situation like this, when you're going to look at a department, is determining if you want to speak to any former employees, especially those that may have left on less than ideal circumstances. Here, we made the decision that we should do that. We felt it was really important to hear them out and hear any concerns that they had to express. In total, I did speak to 30 different individuals. 25 of those were current employees and 5 of those were former employees. I thought it was important to speak to people that ranged in title and teams within the department. I spoke with 1 executive director, 2 district directors, 7 directors, and 15 other current employees. Within those employees I spoke to, there was a mix of relatively newer employees and longtime employees, some who had been there maybe even 15 years or so. In addition to the sometimes lengthy initial interviews that I had, some individuals actually reached out and requested that they speak to me again. Part of this job is trying to balance the costs that you all are going to pay for the interviews that I'm conducting, as well as making sure I'm thorough with the process. Once I was able to get a mass of critical interviews under my belt and felt like I was really able to hit the nail on the head with what was going on and draw some common themes out of this, I had to make the decision to kind of conclude those interviews and move on to the conclusions and prepare this presentation for you all. Overall, I do believe that I received full and open cooperation by all the individuals that I spoke with throughout the investigation. Okay, so I do want to talk to you all a little bit about evidentiary standards. So some participants here had perceptions or strong opinions about legal matters such as, discrimination, retaliation, hostile work environment, and/or constructive discharge. I was able to speak with multiple former employees to ensure we heard as many perspectives on those issues as possible. But it is really important for legal matters like those that you don't just hear someone's personal opinion. You need corroborated evidence, regardless of how deeply held someone's personal perception or opinion is. So that means, I need to know, were there any other witnesses that may have heard any conduct or seen this conduct or heard what you're saying? Do you have any documentation of what you're saying, or is this just something you personally feel? So did you feel like maybe I'm paid less than other people in the department because I'm older than the other people, or is there actual evidence to back this up? On the other hand, I also wanted to look through this situation in two specific lenses. For one, was there any legal violations that occurred during this department that's causing any issues? And also, what's the climate of this department? Why are employees, not having a good experience in this department? Is there anything going on that we need to hear them out on to improve employee experiences? So when it comes to recommendations for improving department's climate and employees' experiences, it's important to give substantial credit to perceptions and opinions, so I have done that here. Okay. So as I just discussed, for a legal violation, you want to have corroborated evidence. This matters because here I did not identify any corroborated evidence that a legal violation had occurred, nor did I identify any evidence that there was any improper hiring or firing going on here. It's important to note that the burden of proving the illegal violation occurred also stands with the person that is alleging that conduct. Now, this is not to say that people only had wonderful things to say about the Human Resources Department. There were several people that expressed concerns and frustrations, and it became clear to me that the department morale is low. These viewpoints are very important in identifying any issues in the department and how it can improve employee experiences going forward. With that being said, I do feel like there are a lot of employees that remain dedicated to the college's mission, and the department needs to take steps to improve those employee experiences and retain those types of employees at the college. I will say many current employees also had positive things to say about the department, and they shared observations and suggestions to further improve employee experiences. Even those participants that I spoke with that had negative things to say and negative experiences, in many cases, gave me ways that they thought things could improve going forward. Now, I will say, one thing you have to consider is when you're talking to 30 different people, you can be sure you're going to get 30 different perspectives. So something that I did throughout this is try to draw common themes. I obviously cannot sit here and tell you everything that each of the 30 individuals shared with me. They're all going to have their own experiences within the department. So there are several factors that I identified that are contributing to the current climate of the department. There's been a change in leadership. There's been significant department growth. COVID-19 impacted the way operations were going, and there are some issues with understaffing. As you know, there's a change in leadership that occurred around November of 2019. There's been a notable shift in the management philosophy from the prior department leadership. We previously had a visible but ultimately passive leader, and now we have a less visible but more active leader. There's been a renewed focus on accountability, which does not always set well with employees. Some people are going to do well with change, and others ultimately are not going to do well with change. There's also been, significant department growth, and for some of the longer-standing employees, I've seen a resistance in sharing institutional knowledge with newer employees. There's also somewhat of a divide between the newer and long-time employees in the department, and this has been exacerbated by COVID-19 because it's been harder for them to build those relationships. Speaking of COVID-19, we all know it's been a difficult time in the world for relationship building and the integration of new employees into a workplace. COVID-19 has had a major impact on human relationships. We can see in the news, for instance, as soon as people were able to leave their houses, we saw people punching each other on airplanes, acting out, doing things that, we just previously had not seen. There's actually a lot of literature on how COVID-19 has changed human interactions. And I will say, I do not think TCC is the only employer facing some of these issues. I will say COVID-19 was especially trying for a human resources department. Employee workloads were increasing. You were having new accommodation requests. People are working from home. People need additional leaves. You're dealing with the COVID leave that's come in place. And so they are not only having new employees trying to integrate a new leader into the department that only started a couple months earlier. You're having department growth, and then you also have an increased workload and employees that you're working with that are not always, if they're coming to you, they're not always in their happiest state. So that also created a lot of stress on human resources employees. I think the hope is that at some point we're all going to get back to some sort of normalcy, but I don't think that's going to happen overnight. It's going to take some time, and it's going to take some intentional actions to get there again. Building a team environment is going to take some time and effort. I will say that it also made the full integration of new employees a serious challenge, including, again, the leader of the department had just started in November of 2019. It also created two distinct categories of employees in the departments, those that were hired pre-COVID and had already been integrated, and those who were hired after. Obviously someone who has only been on 3 Zoom calls with you versus someone that has worked with you for 20 years, you're going to have a different relationship, and some of those newer people are not going to feel as connected. There's also an issue with understaffing within the department. The employees were experiencing an increased workload. Most of them felt underpaid, and they were less happy than they would be in another work environment where maybe they were making more or they were working less. I will say the department experienced several vacancies combined with the pressure of the increased workload. TCC is addressing the issue with the department being understaffed, but this is going to take some time. It's a really hard market to identify and hire qualified employees right now. Now I do want to move on to kind of the climate side of things, and this is where we're talking about the business of perception. This is where I wanted to draw some common themes, and I wanted to really hear these employees out and see how can your experience be improved. We want to have happy employees in this workplace. We want you all to feel like this is a good team environment. Some participants felt that Gloria could be more visible and accessible. For instance, she has a remote office location, so they're not seeing her as much. Now, I will say accessibility can be subjective, and that has to come with limits. She can't be accessible 100% of the time, or she couldn't get her job done. If you have 15 employees wanting 15 minutes of your day, half your day's gone. But I do think a way that you could improve this is maybe having 1 hour each day that you had office hours, or maybe a couple hours of the week that you had office hours. That improves your accessibility, and employees somehow feel like, okay, I can go to her if I need something. Another thing is the office placement. They feel like she's not visible. So, if we could review the office placement and see if that could also decrease the perception that she's not accessible or visible. Another perception was that there's a disconnect between new and longtime employees. As I said, COVID made this extremely difficult. People didn't have the opportunity to know each other. And then even when you re-entered the office, there are people that had worked together for a really long time and already had these developed relationships. So some of the people that are newer in the department don't really feel like they've been fully integrated. That could cause a shift that, employees who are not fully integrated might depart at a higher rate and are more likely to be unsatisfied with their role. And I will say, this includes the department leader, again, who had only started a couple months prior in November 2019. I will also say the lack of integration and resistance is not just at a leadership level. I think there are a lot of lower level employees that don't feel connected with each other, maybe don't feel like they can trust each other. So this is not just any sort of separation between the leadership and the lower level employees, but it's at all levels. I think increasing actions between what you might refer to as the new guard and the old guard can take some time. But if it doesn't happen organically over time, then you're going to have to do things to force the change to chip away the walls that people have built up and improve the morale. I do have several recommendations for how you might be able to do this. I think you can increase the number of all department functions. For instance, have a welcome breakfast or a coffee with new employees or a lunch as a team, or it doesn't even have to be department-wide. It could be certain sections of the department getting to know each other. You can pair and rotate employees on projects where it's possible, so you can increase those workplace interactions. You can also pair new employees with a longtime employee mentor. Another common theme that I was able to draw is that some people feel that some individuals in the department are closer with Gloria than others are. There's a perception that maybe there's an in crowd, or that she's picking favorites when it comes to promotions, stipends, and those types of things. I think that there's a perception that Gloria is the one actually making all the decisions about stipends, promotions, the restructuring of the human resources department. She's perceived to be in charge of things that she might not even be in charge of. For instance, she may assign for one of her directors to be the person over the hiring committee for that, and that person's making the hiring decision. And it's perceived that she's the one who's decided who to put in each role or who to give a stipend to. So she's presumed to be making all the personnel decisions, and that's just not accurate. There are some recommendations how to improve this perception so employees are aware of what's going on within the department. You can increase the transparency on the restructuring and department growth. You can increase transparency on new hires, promotions, and stipends, and I would include in this the hiring manager, the job criteria, and the minimum qualifications. Another common theme that I was able to pull out of this is that trust has been lost between employees, and that's really affecting employee morale. Just like any relationship, trust is something that can be lost really quickly, but once it's lost, it's really hard to gain it back, and it takes time. I think taking active steps to change things will chip it away over time and ultimately improve the employee morale. One way that I think would be helpful to do this is to engage an independent party on a regular basis to provide a lunch and learn and create an open forum for employees to express any concerns they may have. If the independent party comes in, this not only provides trainings for employees, this is going to force department-wide interactions, and this is also going to provide an open forum for employees to express any concerns that they may have. Another thing that has caused some issues in the department and that people have expressed concerns with is that the negative media attention is impacting morale. Even if someone is generally happy within the department, if they're surrounded by people who are expressing negative opinions and experiences, it's going to impact their experience. The media attention is picking up on the most negative experiences that are out there, and so there's some people that have expressed concerns about this. I recommend that we need to address the department, answer any questions employees are having to make sure that they feel okay about anything they're hearing out there. Okay. And at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Fitzgerald. Anyone have any questions or clarifications? I think that's it. I think
Thank you so
I'm
much.
sure that you'll come up and give us some next steps. So thank you, Ms. Hannah. Thank
Actually, Gloria has a presentation now to put in
Okay.
a little bit more context organizationally, some of the things that you've heard, and then
Okay.
the actions that are underway to move us forward.
Great.
So in a positive direction.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Gina, I'm going to use this. Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon. I think it's almost morning or
Almost
afternoon,
there.
everybody.
Yes.
Good morning, Dr.
Good morning.
LeBlanc, President Ayala, and the cabinet and members of the board. But certainly I thank Hannah and Kip for the time that they spent reaching out to every single person. And thank you, Susan, for allowing us to do that. I think the difficult thing for me as we kind of move from Hannah's recommendation into the things that I want to share with you is just the acknowledgement that it is going to be hard. and that regardless of the recommendations that we bring forward, people have to choose to, accept or access those recommendations, and we don't have control over that. But I want to start my presentation with just talking about some of the key functions that happen in HR. I don't know that everyone knows the myriad of duties that come through our office. I'm going to talk a little bit about the turnover in the department and across the college. And then you guys heard last night from Dr. Jeff Lane with Evergreen Solutions. Jeff has been involved with the college dating back past 2015, and I want to share some of his staffing analyses that predated my hiring and a assessment that he did even in 2021. And I want to conclude with some recruitment and retention strategies that not only impact our department, but maybe we can implement those for the entire college because they resulted from some of the 3G 8P work that came out of the Workspace Environments Committee that's led by Dr. Morales. I don't see him here, but part of his work, address some of the needs for employees across the college. So with that, I'm not going to read everything here. You have it in your handouts, but we have several teams, as you can see, within Human Resources. We have an administrative services team that does a lot of the behind-the-scenes work as it relates to budget and procurement, the contracts that run through HR, and then all of the public information requests, which we've seen certainly an uptick in that. And they manage what we created as a result of the pandemic, which is an Ask HR inbox where employees initially responded with forms, reporting questions related to COVID, and it's now kind of morphed into anything that anybody wants to share, which is a good thing. So now we maintain that box for employees, internal, external constituents to share questions, comments, concerns that are then dispersed to the proper teams in HR. We also hired someone to help us address the personnel policies and procedures that need a lot of updating, and they sit on this team, and the new work that's coming out of our ERP. We created in 2021 a new team for employee engagement, and that team focuses right now, because we're just finishing out the first year, on improving our new employee onboarding. They do the standard onboarding of full-time that's always existed and executive onboarding, but we've added to that face-to-face intentional onboarding for our part-time employees, and the college has just as many part-time employees almost as we do full-time employees, so we're giving attention to that large group of our customers. They also handle tuition reimbursements, other things that you'll see there in that list. We also have an employee relations team. That team has experienced probably the most turnover, the most challenges, keeping people on the team because of the sheer number of complaints that come in across the college, the difficulty of that work handling the grievances and Title IX, Title VII. Even though allegations may not be substantiated, people report what they feel. And so we've had definitely an uptick, and I'll share some of those numbers in a later slide, in our Title IX complaints, Title VII, but again, probably more predominantly in the request for family medical leave and accommodations through the ADA as a result of COVID. But that work happens on that team. They also handle all of our unemployment claims, and just with the decrease in enrollment, our unemployment claims went up. The talent acquisition is another team, and that team, I think everybody's familiar with them because they do the hiring. So that's probably everybody's favorite team. But they work with everybody to get their positions posted, their interview scheduled, and they help with the screening. But again, beyond that, they do a lot of auditing. They've been stepping up to try and help with virtual and some in-person job fairs because it is difficult right now to just attract good, candidates, not just the quality, but the quantity. And then we have our benefits team. The benefits team does probably the most transactional work in their liaisoning with ERS for our benefits. They do all of our state and federal reporting, and they do a huge number of stipend requests and audits that come from the campus, and in that coordination with payroll. And then lastly, we have our compensation team. which probably is our second favorite team, as they do the wage analysis and the salary calculations for our new hires. But again, this is not all of the key functions. I'm just trying to keep it to one slide. But there are tons of individual actions that flow through the department, and the work it has increased. Certainly as we came back to in-person work and weaved down, started hiring positions that had been paused previously, the amount of work has increased for the team. And these numbers were the ones that we could actually get sound data on. We don't have an official HRIS, so obtaining data is difficult because everything is tracked manually. But if you'll see in Title IX, we've had, and these numbers are since September 1, we've had 182 Title IX complaints that funnel through our office. There's a separation of it right now where some of the student complaints are handled through the campus conduct officers, and we handle the employee complaints. But right now, again, just for our team, they've never seen that kind of number. And whether it's founded or not, you still have to do the work to address a complaint. Family medical leave, you'll see there, when I started in 2019, there were 72 family medical leave cases. And now we're at 251. And even though that's a number of 251, the amount of back and forth with physicians, employees, supervisors, it's a ton of work just to manage those individual cases. Yes, Susan.
This is one of the areas that the board recently authorized us to outsource. We're hoping to have that stood up by the end of the
September.
Summer. Yeah, by September. So anyway, so there are some areas that we've been trying to inject some transactional support with the support of the board, which we appreciate.
That's correct. Thank you, Susan, for that. We are working on that contract, and look, thanks for the approval for that contract to, again, shift some of that work to an outside source, and it'll allow us to work on the other items. Accommodation requests, we had 181 of those, again, since September, and there were even more prior to the start of this year in a response to COVID. This large number here with the colleague actions, the 6,000 colleague actions, that speaks to me more to the manual nature of a lot of what we do. Every hire action, every separation action, every stipend action, all of these things result in some data entry type transaction in the colleague system. But, again, this is just from September. And to me, this is what speaks more to some of the feelings around just the increased work. And then that's just one piece of it. But the other, I did add full-time hires because we could capture that, 550, and that includes people being hired into different positions across the college, not just external hires. Part-time hires, we had 718, and then they're capturing these position ID changes just because the amount of the work in our system now for every single, if we move person from one person from a campus to another, if you switch them you change their title, colleague requires us to do changes to the position ID for any minor change that happens with a person or a position that may be vacant. But that speaks to just some of the numbers. We are trying to start tracking the data so that we can capture increases, decreases, fluctuation in the work, but right now it is manual. Hannah talked about some of the recent departmental changes.
Can I ask a question about that, just the data,
yes,
the last slide? I'm sorry.
Let me go back.
So you mentioned that there is not currently an HRIS that helps
Yes.
track this information. So I have been the HIRS person in higher education.
Yeah.
Is there a plan for that? Is that part of the
through the
ERP,
yes.
solution? Okay.
Yes, through the ERP.
Empirically, administrative support has increased, and I just can't. I mean, I look at the Title IX complaints and wonder, do you need help with Title IX?
Oh yeah, and honestly, yes, we do, and thank you for that. Thank you.
I don't know how I can help you,
that
but
too, that
you need help with Title IX.
we need help with probably a whole bunch of stuff, but certainly with that too. But we are working on a proposal to submit to Dr. LeBlanc as a strategy to get our arms around Title IX and some of the other work. But I feel like we have been supported, from leaders in trying to figure out the best way to add additional support. Giving us additional positions, yes, that's always a request, but We've had positions that have been vacant, you know, for 6 or 7 months where you're not getting, it's just difficult to hire. So, you know, right now we're trying to focus on acclimating the people we have hired and allowing time for them to learn so that the next person is onboarded better. But hiring is a challenge as well. And some of this work around Title IX and employee relations, that's just where I think people are burnt out in that area, but we're not getting the applicants in that department specifically. I do know that during the pandemic, surprisingly to me, while we were working remote, the number of complaints went up. That, to me, that's where I thought you'd see fewer because people were at home. But even in some of the HR listservs, that was an experience, you know, across our other college peers and I think even in the private sector. Remote did not necessarily mean your employee relations issues went away. Susan, are you about to say
one other
something?
thing I want to add too is just the support that the board has recently provided for the anthology procurement, because the tools in place are shockingly difficult to use. And people don't transition from other organizations very effectively here and show up and can't use the same skill sets they have with other systems when they get here, because there is so much manual work. And so that's part of the dilemma that we're facing, is that we can't make that better overnight as the work gets more complex. And so it's going to, you know, be hard for a while until we start to have some of those tools in place. But
that's a good point.
It makes it very difficult for us to also grade our own paper about how we're doing and the volume of things and what are the metrics and things that we can measure to see how our workforce is faring. And so, to me, you know, flash forward 3 years, we're going to be positioned much differently.
That is a good point. The absence, you know, of an HRIS to like funnel some of the transactional work, we literally are doing a lot of that work with Excel and Outlook. And new people who have come here have been very surprised, and I guess I'll leave it at surprised with that. But it is more difficult work to do it manually, and some people really they don't choose to work that way when they can work other places that have established systems. So, yes, Carol.
I wanted to add one change that happened in late 2019 with the modification of the federal regulations around Title IX. Previously, here in the we're in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, Federal Court of Appeals, and the Federal Court of Appeals had held that employee-on-employee complaints that would otherwise be considered Title IX would not be treated and managed as Title IX complaints, but rather would be handled as Title VII complaints. The then new 2019 changes in Title IX turned that on its ear and said that all of those complaints, employee on employee, must be handled as Title IX complaints. And the Title IX process is extremely complex and cumbersome. There's no other word for it. So that's been part of the reason why you see the uptick in those numbers in Title IX. And we just actually yesterday, on the 50th anniversary of the passage of Title IX, they've come out with the new regs that they are proposing. We're in a new, now going to be in a 60-day comment period. I imagine there will be a great deal of litigation around those, but at some point, who knows when, we're going to have additional changes, and it's not clear if those additional changes are going to address this employee-on-employee conundrum.
Thank you, Carol. And I'll move past the numbers again. I tried to find some, data that, again, data that we knew had some integrity to it that we could get out of the system that we have. Back to the recent departmental changes, Hannah already alluded to, the change in leadership. I started in November, and we had a very generous holiday break that year. We were out 3 weeks for December, and then we had the Thanksgiving holiday. But once we came back from that Christmas break, COVID happened, and we started shifting people to remote work in February. I think that, in hindsight, even for me, and then for people who were hired while we were working remotely, that whole acclimation to, onboarding people and meeting your team was different. For us, it was more challenged because we were learning how to move the work to remote, trying to stand up teams and train people. All of that was happening at the same time. So the virtual experience for us initially was challenging. with hiring new people, and especially for us in supporting other new people that were hired. But at that time, we had 32 employees, and Title IX at that time had 2, but those people had moved with the then AVC for HR to report under the provost office. And shortly after that, between November of 2019 and then September 2021, we had a retirement. Title IX moved back. We added 2 additional positions, and Dr. Giovannitti had approved us for 7 at that time, and our employee count at that point went up to 46. But keeping them filled at the same time, we've never been fully staffed. Even when I started, there were vacancies that the department had. So just getting to a full level of staffing where they're all filled and people are in them to where we can kind of stabilize the work, I think will be probably the thing that I focus on now, is just trying to achieve that staffing. But COVID has kind of hindered that. Just most recently in June, we moved our professional development team that was 3 people to the Center of Teaching and Learning in the effort to, put all of our energy, expertise, and the work around teaching and learning in one place to better support, the needs of the college and have the span of control for that be with the person who has the expertise in that. So we just had that shift, and even with that restructure, again, moving people who have been working closely together to a new team for a good reason, it still creates change that people aren't always happy with when they've been working with people for 10 years or something like that. But just the change that I think, again, change is not always negative, but all of us feel and experience change differently. But we've been through a lot of change since 2019 as a department, and I just wanted to highlight that on this slide. Speaking more to the turnover, at the time that I started in 2019, for our team only, as small as the team is, we've lost 12 people out of that original group, which makes our turnover high. And I wanted to I wanted to acknowledge that at 42% of our original people. But I also want to share that not every single person who left expressed concerns that were negative about leaving. We had 3 part-time people whose assignments ended during that time. They're part of that turnover with no concern. Other people who left, they left for promotional opportunities, which if you look at our org structure at that time, it's very flat. There's not a lot of room for advancement. That's the way the department was structured, and we're trying to work on that to create some opportunities for advancement. And again, because of COVID, there were opportunities in HR, all other opportunities to other industries, but primarily in HR and IT, I think that never existed at the level that they do now for people to be able to work remote. I know that I've never seen the number of opportunities in human resources for people to work 100% remote ever. But those are things that are available now that because we were at home 18 months, people then are confident working remotely. People want to work remote. So we've lost people for, again, opportunities that would not have existed for them pre-COVID. But for a team this small, that's our turnover rate. I also wanted to add some data around just the fact that turnover is happening across the district. And, a lot of the other teams are certainly larger. But if we look at the chart here, they're divided right now because this was the easiest way to get our data out by the cabinet lead. Our position IDs and everything right now it's the prefix of the positions. It starts with the cabinet level that they report to. But I want to share too that if you look at those headers, for example, if we look at the Chancellor's Office, that does not mean just the Chancellor's Office. It includes the people in the foundation, other teams that report up through that structure. The second list is operations. Susan's portfolio has facilities, HR, procurement, the police department. So this is really based on the reporting structure of the cabinet members.
So, excuse me, Gloria,
Yes.
I apologize. Most of this group has to be somewhere else
Oh, I'm
in
so
a
sorry.
little bit.
We're past
And
time.
that's on me. But
No, it's okay.
if we could get to the
want me to skip?
strategies to recruit and retain the employees very quickly.
Oh, yes,
And we
definitely.
can,
Look,
on the
yes, so
performance measures, discuss that tomorrow, because that will be linked to the priorities that we set for tomorrow.
And can I
Okay.
say one
Yes,
sentence
definitely.
just to avoid misinformation? Northwest does not have a 97%
Yes.
turnover rate. There is a math error on that had the
I was
denominator
gonna-
incorrect. So, yeah, so don't be alarmed.
Look, yes, it's Dr. Ayers' campus. It's Northeast. And I had that here as an apology for that typo. That, if we honor the error, that's right. But actually, Northeast has an 8% turnover. The number in the second box should be 367. It should be 367, which would make that 8%. So that's correct. We'll update that and send it back out. But thank you, Dr. LeBlanc. The other pieces in there, and I think it's very self-explanatory, that you all can read again the information that came from Evergreen Solutions, that again dates back to 2017, and then the information coming forward to 2021. But as I mentioned in the beginning, there were several employees working on through a 3G8P principal group. Really, that group is workspace environments, but part of their charge was to talk about the employee experience. And the last two slides speak to the recommendations that came from that group. And this is not all of them. They actually had 17 recommendations, but one of the things that we are doing moving forward to make sure we implement those now that they have completed their work, and all of the recommendations that they submitted have been endorsed. But I wanted to share some of the information that came from that committee pre-COVID that speaks to the employees' desires around recruitment and retention. So the last two slides speak to that. Pay certainly is something that's been probably a concern again from that group. We still hear that now post-COVID. But one of the things we are going to do is launch a standard comp and class study to start addressing that. And then we'll establish some proactive recruitment and pre-employment strategies that, again, make our onboarding and employee retention more intentional. One of the things they recommended, and again, I agree with all of these recommendations, was to develop an employer of choice recruitment brand. And then we're going to meet to talk more about what does that really mean in our recruitment efforts and our offerings to set us apart from our competitors. And again, this is very self-explanatory, so I don't want to delay the time because you have another engagement. But the last two slides speak to the committee recommendations around retention and recruitment that, again, does not come from HR. It comes from that larger workforce principle. And they, I think, worked on it. That work started before I was hired, but this is the summation of their work. And our goal right now is to implement some of these strategies.
Gloria, are those last two slides pertaining to just HR? Or
No.
to all of our issues?
So the last two, again, are the ones that are coming from the employee experience recommendations out of Dr. Morales' group. And so the one that says retention of employees, that's general for all employees, and recruitment of employees. Those came from that, the group was called Workspace and Environments, but they had recommendations around the employee experience.
I'm curious because I just hadn't seen the list. Were there recommendations around flexible work and expansion of offerings?
So there were not, because again, that work started before the
Pre-COVID.
pandemic.
Okay.
But I think, we know now through subsequent forums that Dr. LeBlanc held when we went to all the campuses, we know that that's a recommendation and a need for employees, and we're working to, again, move that forward as we had planned originally in the fall. and there'll be more. We've already started discussions around that.
Well, and our policy allowed for that. We simply had not put in place any procedures
right.
for us to implement it.
That's right. So thank you. Thank all of you for your time. Sorry that I probably talked too much too long.
No,
but
you did fine.
It's fine.
But thank you, and thank y'all again for that. And I'm going to close this then if you're good.
Okay, are you gonna, thank you, Gloria. Will you be closing out, or is that, okay?
No, I think
Okay.
that's the conclusion. I know you have
Okay.
some more to be.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you very much, Gloria. I know that there's some, I'm sure some additional questions that we have. I'm just talking
right.
here with Dr. LeBlanc that I think some of this will be addressed tomorrow, but, you know, particularly around, you know, priorities. What are the priorities? You know, what are the measurables? How are we tracking those? You know, because a lot of the information that comes out of HR could be pertinent to things that we need to be looking at from a policies perspective. So
Yes.
all of this needs to be tied together, and it's going to take all of us. So I appreciate you. I appreciate, Hannah, the work that you did. Thank you very much. And we'll look forward, I guess, to hearing more tomorrow about this topic. Certainly. Thank you.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you. Okay, is there anything else, Dr. LeBlanc? Okay. All right, and Carol, we don't have any closed sessions, so we're, okay, all right. Unless there's no further questions, we'll go ahead and take a motion so that we can adjourn. So moved from Mr. Kine, and thank you very much for all of your time, and we will see you all again tomorrow morning. Thank you.